President Calderon has certainly domestic critics who worry about his militarization of the response to drug gang crime. Peter, where do things stand there? Does he have a handle on it? Is he winning?
Well, this is very hard to judge. You're in the middle of something akin to a war in Mexico, and who's winning and who's losing is hard to tell at this point. I think certainly he is losing in public support on this issue, that people are either unhappy by the actions of the army itself, or they're unhappy by the fact that it doesn't seem to be reducing the amount of violence we're seeing on the streets of some cities. So you have on both sides critics of it. His government is losing support, and the question is whether he'll be able to sustain this even if he were winning. I don't know. I mean, Colombia has shown, and Mauricio can talk to this better than I can, that a military response sometimes can produce results. On the other hand, this crime and violence is a problem that's spread throughout Latin America now. It's probably the major challenge to democratic stability and in the region, and it extends across the Caribbean, into Central America, into many countries of South America. Brazil has a higher crime rate than Mexico, for example. And no one really has a good handle on it yet. No one has really figured out a way to solve it and sort of get out of it and return to something which might be called more normal.
Mauricio?
Well, as Peter said, I'm from Colombia, so when I see these things happening in Mexico, I've seen this movie before, and it's a horror, and we have to avoid that. So what lessons can we learn from Colombia? I think the first one is that at the end of the day, if there is no concrete action here on the US side on consumption, and in the specific case of Mexico, on restricting the sale of arms and weapons that cross the border from the north to the south every day, the problem in Mexico is not going to be solved. It's just going to be shipped to somewhere else. But let's say that those things will not happen in the short run, that there will be no significant reduction in consumption here, and that the sale of weapons and arms will continue unrestricted in the border states. What can Mexico do? Well, Mexico needs more resources. This is just the beginning. They need more support from the US. Colombia took 2 decades really to launch Plan Colombia, which was decisive. Mexico has the Merida initiative, but it's still weak, still timid. Maybe because of the Mexicans. The Mexicans have to request more help from the US, more equipment, more machinery, more intelligence.
Isn't that really where the difficulty comes in? Because of the long and difficult history with the United States, asking American soldiers, for instance, to work with Mexican units, to have flyovers of transshipment points of American fixed-wing aircraft. These are things that Colombia, at some internal domestic risk to its own politicians, did, but might be a whole different matter in Mexico. Ray Walzer?
Right. You have to Mexico will have to show greater flexibility if it wants in-depth cooperation. I don't think you need U.S. military forces in Mexico, but you do need law enforcement people there who obviously can carry guns and protect themselves and even involve themselves in raids against cartels. You raised a good point about aerial surveillance. Clearly the capacity, although again, those could be worked out. Shared space, joint flights. I mean, there's a lot of groundwork. You have to sort of cut through that nationalistic thicket and gut response that well, if it's gringo, it's bad, and you have to change it with
not for nothing. It's not like they have that attitude for nothing.
Well, just
because long and difficult
because we took
here.
a bit of territory from and other things like that. But it's time. They have an immediate, imminent threat. We're not going to be able to make massive, immediate reductions on consumption. Gun laws are not going to change overnight. Plus, it is illegal to export guns to Mexico. They get around it. We need to enforce our own laws stronger. We have to work towards not the past that divides us, but towards that common enemy, which are violent cartels. And even if you legalize marijuana in the United States, you're not going to get at that nucleus of violence, which is basically around the cocaine trade and any other sorts of illegalities that they can exploit.